ways to avoid failing when you're starting a business. Before we get to the 3 ways, Leslie, I want to talk a little bit about what failure looks like, because everybody has sort of a different opinion of what it means to fail. What does it look like in your world? Does it mean...
Well, there's a span. It can be, certainly failure can be, this whole thing crashes and burns. What you put into it is gone.
Right.
Your family leaves you, and...
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
That's bad. But more realistically, that can look like not meeting one's expectations for going into the business, whatever that may be in the first place. Working longer hours, not making the expected income, you're not enjoying it, the day-to-day is not what you expected. And for those sorts of things, the good news is a lot of that is very avoidable if you have a proper mechanism for choosing a business to get into in the first place.
Yeah.
And due diligence.
Yeah. So basically there's all kinds of different ways to view failure. For some people it's mass failure, right? Everything is gone. The money, the family, you're just like left in a cardboard box by the side of the road. It's very sad. But there's all kinds of levels in between that and success, right? That you could still deem failure because maybe you didn't do your due diligence, or you didn't pick the right business, or whatever the case may be. There's also kind of a popular sort of, I hate when things are trending, you know how I feel about that, but there is sort of like a trending phrase these days, which is fail fast, which a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, like, oh, I'm just going to throw it against the wall and fail fast. Well, that's all well and good, unless the fail means I lost my family and all of my savings and I can't do another business because it's all gone, right? Fail fast maybe works when you're 20. I don't know, or 22 or 25. I don't know if fail fast works when you're 45, right?
Well, I think we're talking about a small percentage of the population
that can
really embrace that.
Yeah.
My world is working with people who were not educated that way, were not raised that way.
Right.
By and large, went to college, got a degree, banked on, I'm going to have a steady upward career, and life has changed in the last 15 years or even longer, and now it's a new job cycle every 2 to 3 or 4 years. And those words just don't resonate with most people who are attracted to the the sandbox that I'm playing in, which is franchising.
Right. So, right, because like you talk about often, a lot of people are moving away from corporate, but they're not always looking to get into this super young. They're maybe looking to get into it as a career change, second career.
Yeah, late 40s to mid 60s.
Right. So it's a different mindset. You've got kids at home or grown kids or whatever the case may be. You're not looking to lose, $70,000, $90,000, $100,000, right?
So embrace failure, fail fast does not resonate with that population.
Yeah,
of people.
I think there's a lot of people that, I can understand it on the one hand because it's like, it's hard to say you failed at something, so if you could make it a little sexier somehow, it's not as embarrassing to be like, you know what, I failed, but I failed fast. I don't know, but I agree with you. I think for most people, it's why a lot of people don't go into business, because they're afraid of losing money, of failing, of feeling like they failed, all of that. So let's get to the heart of this. What are some ways we can avoid failure when looking at starting a business?
There's 3 things that I'd like to address around that
Okay.
I get exposed to, I hear of it, I see it in the circles that I am moving in, and they're very common. And the reason they're common, ways that people can set themselves up to fail, and I want to address those so there's some acknowledgement of how to not fall into these traps.
Sure.
It's going against the grain in how we're educated. It kind of, the name of my blog is Logic Does Not Apply.
Right.
So there's some lessons here that go against common logic. So they're very seductive. People set themselves up and not even know they're setting themselves up to choose their business for the wrong reasons going into them. So they're setting themselves up to go downhill from day one.
So before,
and they don't even know it.
Before they even put any money in or make a decision, it's just or actually start the business, they're just looking at the wrong business for some reason.
For some reason. And the way that we are educated to do this, that sets us up to fail, number one, is when someone chooses a business and their main reason for doing so is because they love the product or service. They're a raving fan of the product or service. They're a customer of it. They take their dog to an awesome doggy daycare. I love being around animals. I hate my corporate job. Gosh, I'd love to be around dogs all day. Wouldn't that be the best thing in the world for me?
Okay, so that's a mistake.
It's a mistake when it's the main reason why someone is thinking about starting a business.
Interesting.
That's what their leading cause is behind that. Because you've got to think, okay, just because I think this is a great service as a customer doesn't mean I have the skills to run it.
Yeah.
what if you can't manage a lot of employees, and that's what the business requires of the product or service that you're in love with?
Right. You don't get to just go cuddle dogs all day. You have to
Right.
actually run the business.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to run the business. And what if the product or service that you think is the best thing in the world requires you to go out to do a lot of sales and marketing to get customers for that business, and you're terrible at that, have no experience at it, and have no interest in learning it?
Yeah.
So there's a whole pecking order of things that come above what your personal love affair is with the product or service
Okay.
that impact if you're going to succeed or fail, such as, is there a skill alignment? Is the schedule of that business going to align with what your family's schedule needs to be?
Right. So in other words, if it's retail and you're going to be booked solid every Christmas season, is that going to work for you?
And you have 3
Right.
small children.
Right.
Is that gonna jive with the health of your family?
Right.
And what about a few years, 5, 10 years, whatnot down the line, when you're thinking about your exit strategy?
Yeah.
Is the business going to give you what you want and need financially from an exit standpoint? All of these things have a heck of a lot to do with whether people think they're successful or failing in choosing that business, more so than their personal love affair with the product or service.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's number one. It's not about loving the product or service.
You can, but it can't be your leading business decision.
Yeah, I mean, conversely, it's not a good idea to pick something you hate, right? I mean, you do want to have some attraction to the product or service.
I've met a gentleman he comes from a Hindu background. He owns a ton of Burger Kings. He's never tasted the product or service.
Interesting. Vegetarian.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, my opinion is that is much lower down on the list. And the second one, which is even a bit more counterintuitive, is so certainly if I already have direct experience in a certain kind of business, well, that's a kind of business I should think about going into. I'm going to reduce my risk, right?
Yeah.
Well, in my world of franchising, the opposite is true most of the time. And let me give you an example. So one of the franchises that my father started developing back in the early 80s was Sylvan Learning Centers.
Okay.
Educational, private educational tutorial franchise, right?
Right.
So when he was involved in starting to help recruit franchise owners, who do you think responded to the ads?
Teachers?
Teachers.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they were not successful franchise owners.
Okay, interesting.
Because they spent their time doing what you hire employees to do. They spent their time teaching the classes.
Right.
And no one was running the business.
Yep.
Successful owners are business people, they're marketing people. They're spending their time out drumming up business, creating awareness in the community.
Yeah, it's almost like a principal would be a good Sylvan owner, right? Because they're used to managing teachers, but not, do you know what I mean?
They're not marketers, though.
Well, that's true, too.
Marketers
Yeah.
make the best franchisees
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those kinds of businesses.
Interesting.
So most franchise, and I'm speaking directly to franchising.
Sure, of course.
Most franchises prefer that people have a transferable skill set, which is different than industry background expertise.
Yeah. All right, so what are other ways? What are some other things? I'm sure there's a lot of ways to probably avoid failure. We're focusing on, we're taking a break, and then we're going to come back and focus on some more. I think that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to the Dana Barrett Show. Leslie, I was so engaged, Leslie. I forgot we have to have commercials on this show. Leslie Kuban is with us. She is leading us through, how not to fail when we start a business. We'll be back with more after the break. Stay with us. All right, we are back. It is the Dana Barrett Show on Biz 1190. You can call us here in the studio, 404-231-1190, or you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Dana H. Barrett. The station is at Biz 1190, and if you have franchise questions, you can follow Leslie. What's yours?
Franette Leslie.
I put you on the spot there. What's your Twitter? It's like people have to know these things off the top of their head. So Leslie Kuban is with us. She is our franchise expert here on the Dana Barrett Show. She visits with us about once a month and sort of sets me straight, which I need. I need somebody to come in here and crack the whip from time to time. But all kidding aside, we've been talking about sort of 3 ways to avoid failing when you're starting a new business. And in the prior segment before the break, we sort of got through 1.5, right? So we talked about not falling in love with the product or service and having that be the only reason you choose a business.
Or the lead reason
Or the
why
lead.
you choose a business.
So you can love it.
Of course you can love it, but people get weird in the head about not ignoring all the other things that will really impact if they're successful or not when they think that their love for what this product or service is enough to carry them through all the other aspects that get involved. But smart people do this all the time.
Yeah, I did that. I've done that before. I think, I opened a bookstore because I love to read, and we made a lot of mistakes, for sure. I mean, it turned out okay, but nonetheless, and though it depends on what you deem failure, because maybe it didn't turn out okay, depending on what the goal was getting in, right? The second reason, or the second sort of way to avoid failure you talked about was industry experience, and sort of not only relying on that.
Yeah, when people start to, if they're looking at franchise types of businesses, their go-to is, well, what do I know?
Right.
I mean, what do I know something
Yeah.
about? And if someone gets into a business where they know a whole lot about it already, that can actually set themselves up to fail, because they're going to spend their time probably doing the wrong thing in the business. Most franchises want people. They specifically want people who come from no industry background.
Interesting. So the whole problem, like you sort of gave the example of Sylvan Learning Centers, if you're a teacher, you end up working in the business instead of on the business.
And I don't mean to pick on that one brand by any means.
No.
It's just that, that's true across education businesses.
Well, I mean, you could look at that as in the salon business, right? If you're a stylist, you don't necessarily need to own a salon franchise, because you'll end up cutting hair all day long, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. This is industry across industry across industry.
Sure.
I will say, in our world in franchising, though, an exception oftentimes is in food service. If you're going to run a restaurant, that's a complicated business. It's got a lot more moving parts to it. So, by and large, someone who has food service experience will probably be a better candidate for that. But you look across service industries of all kinds, light retail, business to business, by and large, people are choosing franchises that they have no background in. And that sets them up to succeed versus the opposite.
Yeah, two interesting points there. One, I think, and you alluded to this already, we're not raised to think that way, right? Like, we automatically assume you should love it and you should know it. That's what we're sort of told and taught as we come up and think about entrepreneurship. It's like, oh, do what you know, do what you love. Well, no, maybe those are not the keys. And I have to also say, in my own experience, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, the things that we don't know how to do and we have to delegate actually often work out the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're forced to be the leader in the business, not the doer.
Right.
In the business, when you can't be the doer.
Right, exactly. All right, so enough on that one. Are we ready to move to number 3?
Yeah, last thing I'll touch on is where we can get in trouble. So, does a day go by, Dana, where we don't read something about follow your passion?
Yes, that
follow
is,
your
yeah.
bliss.
Yes.
Find your passion.
Yeah.
And everything else will work out, right? Okay.
I might be guilty of saying that a time or two myself.
But people who are successful in business, there's a ton of passion there.
Yeah.
But my opinion and my experience is we got to look at some different things about what people are passionate about. And my best example ever is this guy that I met. He was a corporate lawyer by training, okay? But he also got into growing a chain of dry cleaners.
Okay.
And the guy is over the moon about his dry cleaners, right? Loves his dry cleaners. And I'm thinking, what's to love about being in the dry cleaning business? But here's what he had to say about it. He said, I love the dry cleaning business because it's very simple, because it's not rocket science here. It was easy for me to scale it, train employees, hire employees. There's nothing anybody's going to want to steal here. This is a cash business. I don't have any accounts receivable. I'm not chasing people to pay me. We have repeat customers. And the best part is this cash register is ringing when I'm not there.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, I'm billable hours. There's a limit on what I can grow in my income. And I'm trading my time for my income. Whereas with a business that is a very simple business, there's no rocket science here, but it's simple, it's needed.
Yeah.
I've been able to grow this. And now my real passion is I have the time, freedom, and income to go do what I want.
Yeah.
So the passion is the benefits that owning the business gives me.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what it is and it having to be an extension of my self-identity.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It is sort of the chic thing right now to sort of follow your passion career-wise. And I have met many people who say similar things, right? Who say, I work because it pays me well and it frees me up to travel when I want to travel, to do what I want to do on the weekends, to spend time with my family, whatever it is, right? So it's not, following your passion into your career is not necessarily the key to success, and it's not for everyone, right?
Well, but the way you're stating that is attaching passion to what the widget is.
Yes.
Again.
Right.
And there's a lot of ways that people can find passion in employing people,
right,
being a leader, providing jobs for people, doing something good in the community that can be agnostic to what the widget is. If it's dry cleaning, or in a retail store, or in pet supplies, or in dental services, I mean, people get too fixated on, in my opinion, having to feel like what a business I'm in has to be an extension of my soul.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I think what I was sort of getting at too, though, is if your passion, for example, is guitars and playing the guitar, you can still do that. But you can also be passionate about all the things you're saying, about running a business, managing a business, and you can play with guitars all weekend long, right? Or at night, or when you retire, whatever. Just because you love guitars doesn't mean you need to make it your business.
Right.
You can also love being in business. And I've also met a lot of people who think about going into business and they don't know what they want because they're not in love with any particular widget, and they think they need to be.
Exactly. So they're limiting their options.
Right.
And the world looks very small. But if we reframe what people can be passionate about, it really opens the door to all kinds of ways that people can achieve their personal, professional, financial goals, do good things, be passionate about what it is, and not thinking that the business has to be attached to your hobby or some personal interest or something that you even know about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I don't know why Tony Hsieh from Zappos sort of turns into my example for everything. Maybe because there's a retail shopping component there.
There's shoes involved, Dana.
There's shoes. But to that exact point, Tony Hsieh was not in love with shoes. He was not in love with shopping. He was not in love with material goods. He was in love with being in business and creating something from scratch and building something and employing people and creating a cool corporate culture. Those are the things that he was in love with.
The shoes are the vehicle to all of those things.
Exactly.
Not the end in and of itself.
Exactly. I got a little chill there, Leslie, because we hit on something really important. Yeah, and I think that's a huge, huge point. And so I think, as you're sort of thinking through, especially here we are at the end of 2014, we're about to start a new year. Everybody starts looking at, what's the new year going to look like? What's my future going to look like? What are my resolutions going into the new year? Well, if one of the things on your list maybe is thinking about getting into a business, maybe just from this conversation you can shift your thinking a little bit, right? And stop looking for that widget that you're in love with, because that is not it.
It's a limiting factor that can often lead people down a road that they're not intending.
Yeah.
And they end up in a place where they don't want to be.
And you know what else, on a side note regards that, I'm sure you've experienced this too, people who do get into a business around that thing they love often find themselves less in love with that thing.
It's keep your hobby your hobby.
Yeah.
Don't make it your livelihood.
Yeah, because then it's just not as, if it is guitars, right, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have to deal with another guitar. And then you don't want to do it for fun, and you don't want to do it for love anymore. So that's, another risk. It's not always the case. Look, there are some people that find that exact, perfect storm of, I get to do the thing I love, it's the widget I love, it's the industry I have, it's all of those things. But I think to your point, you can't focus on any one of those if what you're looking for is a quote-unquote successful business.
Those are so the exception rather than what really applies to most of us.
Yeah.
So, if and a lot of it is, that would be luck.
Yeah.
And you can't create luck.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I take that back? We can't create our own luck, but trying to plan to put yourself right in the middle of a perfect storm like that,
yeah,
that may happen, but we'll all be 98 years old.
Well, what's also interesting about that, yeah, and who wants that? Let's do it now. Let's not wait for that, piano to drop right in front of us or whatever, right? But a lot of these people that you talk to that are super successful did not expect that, right? Like, they didn't go into it because they thought they were going to be super successful. They kind of happened to be in the right place at the right time and stumbled on something and had the wherewithal to turn it into something great. But
yeah, Sarah Blakely just wanted her tush to look good in white pants. She did. It was not her business plan
to run Spanx.
For Spanx,
right?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. All right, I love it. We've been talking with Leslie Kuban.
Shopping again.
We go right there. It's the holidays. We have party dresses. That's what we're about. We've been talking with Leslie Kuban, our franchise expert here on the Dana Barrett Show. We're going to take a quick break. We'll have more right after it, so stay with us.